Yes, hello. Thank you for tuning in to my second tutorial. Thanks to everyone who viewed the previous tutorial, and I encourage everyone to continue viewing the tutorials that I will be giving out to keep us updated. Um, in order for us not to forget what we really learn, by the time we resume study or we resume school, at least we shall be at the same pace as we left school. So today my tutorial will be on microfinance theory and practice, and I'm sure most of us are familiar with this. So I'll be having different tutorials. So I'll call this tutorial 1 on microfinance theory and practice. Basically today on this tutorial I'll be talking of just a brief introduction about the microfinance institutions and their regulation, maybe to some extent the risks these microfinance institutions face. So this tutorial will cover that. So when you talk of microfinance institutions, specifically what comes into your mind is that these are the financial institutions that lend money to the low income people of the population. You know that we have different financial institutions, and the microfinance institutions fall under the the financial institutions because they have the commercial banks, can have the circles. Also, the microfinance institutions are financial institutions. So now we have to ask ourselves, do we really need to regulate financial institutions? Does the government need to regulate financial institutions? The answer is yes. Because if you look at financial institutions, they are faced with a lot of market failure. If you let financial institutions work on their own without any regulation, with a lot of market failure, you realize that their goal will not be achieved. So now basically let us have our first subheading, and that is, why does the government regulate microfinance institutions? The first reason is moral hazard. I hope to everyone who is viewing this tutorial, I hope you have at least a pen and a notebook. For any serious student or for any serious learner, at least you should be noting down something. So the first reason as to why we regulate, or as to why the government regulates microfinance institutions, is the moral hazard problem. Realize that depositors in most cases cannot or do not have sufficient information on how their deposits will be used. They don't have sufficient resources to follow up on what is happening to that deposit, and realize that there are many problems associated, like limited information that the depositors will always have will lead to the moral hazard problem. So this calls for government regulation. The second reason is adverse selection. We know that when you look at borrowers, a borrower tends to have information that a lender may not have. There is some information that we always have by ourselves, and the lender will not know that information. Like if let's say if someone is really capable of paying back a loan if they acquire one, you realize that that will be personal. It's only that borrower that will know his or her willingness to pay back a loan. So adverse selection comes in a way that, for example, if you look at if let's say a bank, a microfinance institution increases the interest rate, realize that they will tend to attract bad data, people who are not willing to pay, because a person who is willing to pay and he or she sees that there is a high interest rate on this, they will not be able to borrow, because they will know at the end of the day, I won't afford this interest rate. So adverse selection comes in that way. You have the borrower has information that you, the lender, cannot have. So we come up with problems at the end of it. People like people do not pay back their loans and so on. So there is need to regulate, to know, to follow up. And the other reason is negative externalities. You know that the financial institutions are associated with many problems. As I told you, market failure is really key. So now we realize that financial institutions face different problems. For example, bank runs, negative externalities. So in a situation where we have bank runs, you realize that most of the individuals or depositors run to the bank to withdraw all their money. So in that case or in that situation, you realize that the bank will go bankrupt. So the situation where depositors are running to the bank to withdraw all their savings or their deposits, that's a bank run. So there is need to come up, or there is need to regulate these microfinance institutions to avoid the negative externalities that come in financial institutions. Then you also need to make sure that public resources are put into effective use, because just imagine of a situation where depositors keep their money or deposit their money in a microfinance institution, and maybe this money is put into other use that is not necessary use, maybe personal use by the bank owner. So realize that there is need to regulate to make sure that public resources are put to effective use. Then the last reason here we can talk about is to familiarize with deposit taking, to familiarize with institutions that wish to become deposit taking institutions. So that is another reason for regulating. Now, if we are saying that the government regulates the microfinance institutions, our next question, or the next question that we have to ask ourselves are, what principles does the government follow in regulating these financial institutions, or any institution that is any organization that is responsible for regulating these institutions? What principles do they follow, or should they follow? And the first principle here we can talk about is competitive neutrality. Now, competitive neutrality is a situation where they level the playing field, where you accord equal treatment to each microfinance institution, treat them the same way, regulate them the same way, do not segregate between the microfinance institutions. So the first principle is competitive the first principle is competitive neutrality. Then you have the principle of efficiency, the second principle. Efficiency is more, as you know, efficiency is more of making effective use of the resources, making sure that the resources we are channeling or we are using will in turn bring in effective results. Then we have a principle of we have a principle of flexibility. Now here is more of a situation where these as the government is regulating, you have to take into concern the innovations that come in, the technological changes that occur in uh, in the world. We have a principle of proportionality. Is also another principle. Now proportionality, or we can call it cost benefit analysis, is that we, like when you're regulating these financial institutions, they have to make sure that you're using less resources, that the costs are not high, but amidst the low cost you have to achieve the best results. So that is proportionality, achieve best results but with low costs. Now, those are some of the principles of regulating these microfinance institutions. Now, after us looking at the principles, we look at regulatory approaches. Which approaches does the Blessed government take in regulating the microfinance institutions? The first approach can be regulation by existing bank laws. Like we all know that there are laws upon which banks or financial institutions must follow. So they can regulate a given microfinance institution. For example, we have many, like Pride Microfinance, where they can regulate it depending on the bank laws that exist in a given country. Take an example, maybe each bank must maybe keep a certain cash ratio from the deposits that they receive from the borrowers. You understand? So if that is the law, then it means that if they're regulating, that approach can be used. Regulation regulation by banking law, by the existing banking laws. So the second approach can be self-regulation, where they can let the microfinance institutions regulate themselves. I don't know how to what extent this can work, but it's also another approach. Then the third regulation approach can be offering an exemption from the existing bank laws. Now, I'll take an example. We financial There are different laws that financial institutions should follow, let's say, in running their daily activities. Take an example: daily reporting to the central bank. Now, offering an exemption from an existing law is a situation where maybe they can say, now, to a level of the microfinance institution, don't report on a daily basis, maybe report on a monthly basis. So that is offering an exemption from the existing bank laws. The law exists, you're supposed to report, but because you're a microfinance institution, let us exempt you from this. So that is a third approach that I was talking about. Now, the fourth approach I can talk about is regulation by special law. Here is when you come out, when the government maybe regulates, they can regulate, but given a special law, a law that only accords to the microfinance institutions, basing on the nature of their work, basing on the capacity of their work, because you can't compare a commercial institution with a microfinance institution. As you hear, it is something micro. So maybe they can come up with a special law. They can regulate the microfinance institutions through a special law. So those are the approaches they can use to regulate the microfinance institutions. Now, the last bit of this tutorial will be about the risks that microfinance institutions face, because as we hear, we realize that as we say that if you look at a country like Uganda, it's a highly entrepreneurial country, right? And different people come up with set up different microfinance institutions, but realize that these microfinance some of them don't get to celebrate even their first birthdays. And why is it that most of them operate under losses? So, because these microfinance institutions are associated with lots of risks, that is the key problem. That is really a huge problem. Now, what are these risks? You ask yourself, what are these risks that the microfinance institutions face? Now, the first risk is credit risk. Realize that when you borrow, as I told you that and if when you are looking at some of the reasons for regulation, we talked of adverse selection, right? You have the lender has no there is some information that the lender doesn't have about the borrower. Now, in this case, realize that if you're talking of credit risk, the microfinance institutions give out a loan, can extend a loan to individuals, to borrowers, but in turn the borrowers do not pay back the loan. So that is a credit risk, and it is really very high. Remember, I said that microfinance institutions, to a larger extent, they lend money to the low income earners of the population. So realize that the credit risk part of it is a high risk that faces this microfinance institutions. Now, the second risk is the liquidity risk. Now, you may ask yourself, how different is credit risk and liquidity risk? Now, because now, what can I say? I can say maybe there is a causal relationship between the two. Because if you're looking at credit risk can in turn lead to liquidity risk, because if borrowers are not paying back the loans that they got from financial institutions, realize that now the liquidity risk will come in, because now the banks will not have the cash maybe to loan out to other borrowers and maybe to pay back to people who deposited. So liquidity is when they don't have cash with them to pay, maybe to lend out to other people or to pay to the depositors that had deposited their money. So liquidity risk is another risk associated with microfinance institutions. Another risk is the managerial risk, management risk. Realize that these microfinance institutions, in most cases, maybe they are family businesses, they tend to attract people incompetent people, incompetent managers, someone in a position, but that position that does not belong to that person. They lack skills, they lack all the things that maybe a manager must have to run a given institution. So remember, someone is dealing with money, so management risk is another issue. Then the new industry risk, because is also another new industry risk is another risk, in that yeah, if anyone is coming up with a new business, it means that you have to have a lot on you, in terms of skills, in terms of creativity, in terms of persistency, ambition, and so many others. So joining, or maybe joining the industry as a new entrant, is something that is really very difficult, and amidst the stiff competition, or the competition that is within the market. So if you look at financial markets are really very competitive. There's a lot of competition. So new industry risk is one of the risks that these microfinance institutions face. Can they be in position to cope up? Another risk we can talk about is the subsidy dependence risk. Realize that in most, remember, if you look at the government, the government tends to favor the microfinance institutions, because, as I told you, the biggest part of the population, and those are the low income earners, they borrow money from microfinance institutions. So the government always gives subsidies to microfinance institutions, maybe exempting them from taxes, giving them maybe giving them free areas to operate from. So such subsidies, realize that because they depend on these, they over depend on subsidies. Now just imagine of a situation where the government is no longer giving them subsidies. So that is a really very huge risk. Will they operate without subsidies? So that was the last bit of it. Maybe I'll end with giving a brief summary about this tutorial. I was talking of microfinance institutions, and I said these institutions, they borrow, sorry, they lend money to the low income part of the population. And I said that our first sub topic or heading was why they regulate microfinance institutions, and we gave reasons such as moral hazard, adverse selection, negative externalities, effective use of public resources, need to familiarize with deposit-taking institutions. Then, after talking about the reasons for regulation, we talked of the principles of regulation, where we talked of the principle of competitive neutrality. We talked of the principle. We talked of the principle of flexibility. We talked of the principle of proportionality, among others. If the principle of efficiency was also among. Then after talking about the approaches, sorry, the principles, we talked of the approaches of regulation, and we said we can have regulation by bank law, regulation by special law, we can have self-regulation, and then we can have offering an exemption from the existing bank law. Then, after looking at the approaches, we talked of the risks that these microfinance institutions face, and we talked of the credit risk, liquidity risk, management risk. We talked of subsidy dependence risk. We talked of we 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 talked of the new industry risk, and what I forgot to talk about is the interest rate risk. Now this is a huge problem, because you can have a situation where these microfinance institutions can tend to lend out money to individuals at a given interest rate, but in paying back, these interest rates are not adjusted for inflation. We know that inflation, countries can be inflated. So if you don't adjust an interest rate for inflation, realize that the microfinance institutions end up losing, not gaining, not getting profits from the activities they did. Thank you for watching this tutorial. Tune in to my next tutorial, part 2 of microfinance theory, and don't forget to subscribe, and don't forget to get to view the video of the Soros model, part 2 of intermediate macroeconomics, and I'll be coming in with econometrics, specifically beginning with regression and correlation analysis. Why miss this chance? Subscribe. Bye.